Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. I'd like to share another family favorite recipe, and it is called Hungarian fish soup, Halászlé. So what you will need for this recipe is 4 filet cod and 3 filet of sole and 2 deboned filet of trout, 1 medium onion, 2 cloves of garlic, 10 cups of water, 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil, 1 tablespoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of Vegeta or vegetable base, 2 teaspoons of paprika, and 1/2 teaspoon of ground pepper. Now what I've done is I have washed the cod, sole, and trout thoroughly. So I picked this up at my local fish market, and I chose fresh fish, like not frozen fish. And what I did was I cut up the trout into half, and I've left the cod and the sole in whole pieces. So then what I did was I chopped up some onion and garlic. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by frying the onion and garlic in vegetable oil until slightly brown. Then I'm going to add the fish, and I'm going to mix it together with the above ingredients and add water to it and cook it at a low heat for approximately 20 to 30 minutes. So I'm going to get this started. I've got some oil on the stove, and I've started it at a low heat. So I'm going to kind of fry the onions and the garlic, get that started. Now this was also another family favorite recipe of my grandmother's and mother's, and it is quite a popular dish amongst my mom's friends also. We would have this when my dad and his friends would go fishing. They would bring in fish from their fishing trip, and my mom would cook the fish, and she'd make this great Hungarian recipe, the Hungarian fish soup. Now this is served in restaurants all across Hungary. Quite popular dish. So I'm just going to continue doing this and browning the onions. And this is a great recipe. I mean, you can add pasta to it, and I'm going to show you exactly how it's served later on in my video. I'm just going to get this going here. And then what I do is I add the fish. So I've got some cod. Got pieces of cod and trout together, but you can use any type of fish of your region. So I've chosen to use this type of fish. So I was able to get, so this is I'm going to add this to the onions and the garlic, all the fish here. I'm going to put the cod in. And then I'm going to put the trout in. So I've got 2 trout, and I've cut them in half. Pieces are small. Small trout. You can use larger pieces if you want. So I'm just going to put that in there, and I'm going to quickly just stir it around. I don't want to be frying down the fish. So I'm just going to quickly put that into with the onions and the garlic. Just going to stir it around a bit, carefully. And then I'm going to add, just want to get the onions mixed with the fish. Now this soup doesn't take a lot of time to cook. That's what's nice about it. But you don't want to be overcooking the fish. So I'm just going to let that sit there for a minute, and then I'm going to start adding the water. So I've chosen to do 10 cups of water. So I'm going to add that to it, and I'm going to add another 2 cups. So it's 10. Then I'm going to start adding the spices. So what I've got here, and this is really important to have the paprika for it, because for the color, it's just great. It looks great with that sort of red color in it. And then you add the pasta to it. So I'm going to add I use sea salt. I'm going to add the sea salt to it. And then I've got some Vegeta. If you don't have Vegeta, you can use a vegetable base, so I'm going to add that. And then I've got the ground pepper, half a teaspoon of it. And you can add more or little to it, but I think that if you're generous with the spices, it just brings out the flavor a lot better. And then I've got the paprika, and I've used the Hungarian sweet paprika. So I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of that. Now you might want to use less. Now it's looking just great. You know, there's a reddish color to it. Now this is going to be cooking for about 20 to 30 minutes at low heat. And throughout the cooking process, what you need to do is you need to do this rather than stirring it. So make sure that the lid is on top of the pot and shake it like this to stir it around, because you don't want the fish to fall apart. So be very careful that the fish doesn't fall apart. And what I do is I just slightly leave the lid off of the partially covered on the stock pot, and I've used the stock pot for this soup recipe. So then what I've done is I've cooked up some shell-shaped pasta for the it's called ciga testa, so shell-shaped pasta. And when the soup is ready, I've written in my instructions that you remove the fish from the soup broth with a large serving spoon, and you put that in a separate dish. And then what you do is you serve the broth with the ciga testa, which is a shell-shaped pasta. If you don't have that at home, you can use other types of small pasta for the recipe. So you add it. You have a dish like this, and people can add the pasta to the soup. And of course, any leftover fish, you can actually eat that on a separate plate if you want. So what I'll do is, when the recipe is ready, the soup is ready, I'm going to show you what this wonderful recipe looks like served with pasta. Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. I have a pot of fish soup, Hungarian fish soup, on the stove, cooking for about 30 minutes at very low heat. And I have the stock pot covered partially with a lid. And as I mentioned in my video, what you would do is you would lightly shake the stock pot twice at the beginning of the cooking of the soup. But after that, you'd probably want to leave it to let it cook on its own. And then what I've done is I've removed the fish from the soup with a large serving spoon. And what I've done is I've put some broth into a bowl and added some ciga testa, some shell pasta. And I'm going to show you what this great recipe looks like. So this is the broth, and what I've done is I've added some shell pasta to it, and this is how you would eat the soup. So you would eat it with the broth, and there's of course onions and garlic and all the other spices that I've mentioned in the recipe. And of course it's very important to add the paprika to it, and I've used the Hungarian sweet paprika. So, and then what I'd like to show you is the fish that I've taken out of the soup. So in it I have the trout, and I have the cod and the sole. And so this can be served separately on its own. You can actually eat the fish on its own. And if you are using fish with bones, a tip that I mentioned is when cooking boned fish, you can use a soup stock pouch to place the fish into it to prevent the bones from mixing into the broth. The pouch can then be easily removed from the broth. And of course you can take the fish out of the pouch, and you can eat the fish on its own. So that's just kind of like a safety tip. So if you're using fish with bones in it, if you don't want to use fish without bones, you can use that just for a preventative measure for safety reasons, and that just prevents the bones from going into the soup. So that's I thought I'd mention that to you. And you could probably buy that at probably a store where they sell cooking sort of tools and that. So, and they're probably in large pouches. Also, my grandmother and my mother didn't use that. They would strain it through a very thin strainer or cheesecloth. The broth, they would strain it through there, and to prevent the bones from entering the broth. But usually they would take the bones out, be able to take the bones out themselves. And you could also get your local fish market to do that for you if you're unable to do that. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me at irene@irenkaskitchen.com or irenkaskitchen.com. Until next time, bon appetit, jó étvágyat!